Bring him here to me. And Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of him, and the child was cured from that very hour. Then the disciples came to Jesus privately and said, Why could we not cast it out? So Jesus said to them, Because of your unbelief. For assuredly I say to you, if you have faith as a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, Move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. However, this kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting. Don, we've been talking about belief, really believing and having faith for thousands of years. And so that's what I think is what you and Napoleon Hill have given to the world in a different way, where you really put it into practical application. And that, what I believe is applied faith, is having faith and applying it, using it, moving forward with it. So let me turn it over to you with those thoughts.
Absolutely. I mean, he starts off on talk about faith, and he said visualization of and belief in the attainment of desire. And, the book was called 1.13 Steps to Riches, but that was number 2 in Steps Toward Riches. And he defined it as a head chemist of the mind. He said that when the faith is blended with thought, the subconscious mind instantly picks up on it, translates it into its spiritual equivalent, and transmits it to its intelligence, as in the case of prayer. He said the emotions of faith, love, and sex are the most powerful of all major positive emotions. And when the three are blended, they have the effect of coloring thought in such a way that it instantly reaches the subconscious mind, where it is changed into spiritual equivalent, the only form that induces a response. He tells us how to develop faith and to have a better understanding and part of the principle. And he said it was a state of mind over and over again that could be induced or created by affirmations, and be created through prayer. And but so many people, they have a little bit. I read a sermon, and I know you've heard it, that they had a drought, and the minister sent word that on Sunday his sermon would be praying for rain. And so when it comes Sunday, one little 12-year-old girl shows up with an umbrella, and nobody else is carrying one.
That's beautiful.
So his sermon become ye of little faith.
Yeah.
In other words, they didn't see it happening. It was nice to talk about it, but they truly wasn't believing it, except for the little 12-year-old girl that followed orders, and she brought an umbrella, and the only one that showed up. So it is a tremendous subject, and he goes on to talk about the emotions. He talks about that none of us is doomed to what we would say bad luck. Bad luck is nothing but a lack of faith in what we're doing, because if we don't believe it, we won't create the prayer, and we won't create the activity that produces what we want. And it's all because of a weak or an unbelief that we can change things. People will say such things as, well, we may be poor, but we're honest. Well, that's just plain goofy, because and it's simple lack of belief, a lack of faith is a reason you're not getting results. If you don't believe you can affect the change, you will either put out a very weak effort or no effort at all, and yet you still like to have positive results. And it's not going to happen without a positive belief, a belief in that you can make difference in your life. And he gives us different examples. He gives us examples of auto suggestions where we can repeat things. He said it's simply faith, the basis of all what people would call miracles. And he said, and all these miracles cannot be analyzed by the rule of science, but we know they happen. And he said, faith is the only known antidote for failure. It's an element, the chemical, which when mixed with prayer gives one direct communication. And so it's extremely important, but so many people never get to that point in their lives. And then they wonder why things are not like what they would like for them to be. And it's a lack of faith.
Well, you started off talking about Napoleon Hill said that faith without works is dead, and we all know that comes from James 2:14 through 16. What does it profit, my brethren, if someone says he has faith but does not have works? Can faith save him? If a brother or sister is naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you says to them, depart in peace, be warmed and filled, but do not give them the things which are needed for the body, what does it profit? Thus also, faith by itself, it does not have works, is dead. So, what we're really getting into, to go deeper here, is, so prayer by its very nature is to God. And so Charles Stanley, I know, is a friend of yours, and that when I said it on the air that day, last time you were here, that I just wanted to get this out, that I think that if you had dedicated yourself to being a preacher, you'd be one of the top preachers in the world, because you're a man of faith. You give it all to God. You know the Bible inside and out, but you're a very practical person where like I said, if you try to just give people direct word of the Lord, sometimes they reject it for whatever their reasons are. But in preparation for the show, I Googled applied faith, and Charles Stanley, a sermon from Charles Stanley came up on, it was called Charles Stanley on Wandering Faith. And the same things that he was talking about is the essence of everything that Napoleon Hill is talking about. And it's all because it comes from the word of the Lord. And I just loved it, what Charles Stanley was saying. He got into Daniel and the lion's den. And now this is an example of faith that I think you'll appreciate. So Daniel's in there, and he told this story where Daniel's in the lion's den, and if he didn't have faith, he might have just got over a little corner and huddled up real good and just hoped and prayed that those lions didn't smell him and get hungry. But so here's the story that Charles Stanley said. And I'm bringing up Charles Stanley because when I asked you this question the last time on the show, was Napoleon Hill biblically based? And you said, well, does anybody know who Billy Graham is? And, Billy Graham passed a couple weeks ago here, and it's a great loss for the world, but we had him for 99, almost 100 years, so we should just say thanks. But you said, and Charles Stanley, he reads Think and Grow Rich once a year. So we know that
it's on YouTube, and my friend Jim Stovall, who I talked to about an hour ago, has written 40 books, and, extremely wealthy and blind. And his story is that Lee Braxton was his mentor when he was going blind. Lee Braxton was a friend of Napoleon Hill. In fact, he delivered his eulogy, and he was his mentor when he was going to Oral Roberts University. And he's the one put him on Think and Grow Rich. Told him to read it, and he saw him. He said, "Did you read it?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Read it again." So there's deeply a connection there. And he told me that the last time he had spoke to Billy Graham, he said he was reading a chapter on going the extra mile. Said he loved that chapter in Think and Grow Rich. But Steve, I might say with something about under faith, we have all kinds of people. In fact, it's posted on my wall in there in one of the other rooms on the door, tacked it up. Hill wrote a piece on self-confidence in 1930 for the paper in New York. I believe it was a New York Post at the time. But he included a self-confidence formula in the chapter on faith, and we call it the 5 steps to riches for what you want to call it, but it's under self-confidence formula, and it's in that chapter on faith, and we get people asking this all the time. I tell them, well, just go to the chapter on faith. That's where it's listed. Of course, most people they don't want to go to the trouble to read that much. They just want you to get it all to them in 2 or 3 words. But he said, under that, he said, first, we say to ourselves, I know I have the ability to achieve the object of my definite purpose in life. Therefore, I demand of myself persistent, continuous action towards its attainment, and I here and now promise to render such actions. And he goes on to explain, he said, I realize the dominating thoughts of my mind will eventually produce themselves in outward physical action and gradually transform themselves into physical reality. Therefore, I will concentrate my thoughts for 30 minutes daily upon the task of thinking of the person I intend to become, thereby creating in mind a clear mental picture. And he says, I know through the principle of auto-suggestion that any desire I persistently hold in my mind will eventually seek expression, some practical means of attaining the object back of it. I will devote 10 minutes daily to managing myself, the development of self-confidence. And then he says, I have clearly written down a description of my chief aim in life, and I will never stop trying until I have developed sufficient self-confidence in its attainment. And then he says, the fifth one is, I fully realize that no wealth or position can long endure unless built upon truth and justice. Therefore, I will engage in no transaction which does not benefit all whom it affects. I will succeed by attracting to myself the forces I wish to see and the cooperation of other people. I will induce others to serve me because of my willingness to serve others. I will eliminate hatred, envy, jealousy, selfishness, and cynicism by developing love for all humanity, because I know that a negative attitude towards others can never bring me success. I will call others to believe in themselves because I believe in them and in myself. I will sign my name to this formula, commit it to memory, and repeat it once a day with full faith that it will gradually influence my thoughts and actions so that I become a self-reliant and successful person. See, and you can never get through any of this stuff and expect it to be accomplished without not just faith, but applied faith. Can't be like the little boy believes that guy can roll someone across a wheelbarrow, but he's not willing to ride in the wheelbarrow. So, and that kind of faith is not worth a lot.
And this
one has got the famous little poem. You know, I attended a bankers convention one time, about 400 people. They were banking executives at the Greenbrier Hotel up in West Virginia. This was in the, it was probably in the 70s or 80s, a long time I was connected with the foundation, but I was reading the material, and he put a poem in there, and the name slips me, it's not in the book, the name slips me who did it, but I did research on it and wrote it down somewhere, but it's a poem, and it says, if you think you are beaten, you are. If you think you dare not, you don't. If you'd like to win, but you think you can't, it's almost certain you won't. If you think you'll lose, you're lost. For out in the world we find, success begins with a fellow's will. It's all in the state of mind. If you think you're outclassed, you are. You got to think how to rise. You've got to be sure of yourself before you can ever win a prize. Life's battles don't always go to the strongest or fastest man, but sooner or later, to the person wins is the person who thinks he can.
Yeah. You know, Henry Ford's famous quote, that brings it to mind, is if you think you can, or if you think you can't, you're right. So,
yeah.
Napoleon Hill, in the interview I listened to today, he defines success as the capacity for belief. He says that failure is when people that are in that think in terms of failure, they see the hole in the donut. People that think in terms of success, they see the hole, but they see the whole donut too. And I like that. He also talked about in the mental attitude that you can have reverse faith or forward faith. And reverse faith is a negative gear called being negative. But what I like, and you've talked on this a lot with me, you know, he didn't just talk about working toward something that you want. He said that you can go after and demand things and not beg for things when you have that right applied faith that you're using. I love that when he talks about life can be more or less to decide what you want and then get it, and not just be hoping that you get it. So that's a pretty strong thing there, I believe.
Absolutely, and it's amazing that the research you can do on applied faith by going to the internet, going to the Bibles, of course, absolutely Absolutely.